Well, hello, students. This is your professor, Shalomo Levy. It seems like just a few weeks ago, I was recording a video to welcome all of you to this course on American history. And now, after just a few short weeks, it seems, I'm recording a video to explain how our course is going to come to a conclusion. Of course, we have the debate on the American Civil War this week, and I'll talk about what to expect with that. Then you have your final exam next week, and I wanted to let you know what to expect, the structure and format, and even some of the content of what's going to be asked on that final exam. And then finally, I want to explain how I calculate your grade for this course. And so these are questions that students are often very curious about, interested in at the end of the semester, and I want to explain all that to you now. But before I do that, allow me to take a moment to thank you for being such a wonderful class. You know, I've been teaching at Northampton Community College for over 15 years, and it still amazes me at the conclusion of a successful semester of the things that made it so good. It is the course itself, of course, American history, which is very interesting. It's the books that we read. It is the professor and what he or she brings to the course. But I think the most important element are the students themselves. And you've been a great class, and I want to thank you and let you know that I noticed and appreciate your hard work, the spirit that you brought to the course, a spirit of a love of learning, the respect that you had for each other, and the quality of the engagement, both in our online discussions and our personal interactions when we've had them. I thank you for being a good class for me and for your classmates. Now, as to your last assignment, this final assignment is a 20-point exercise, and it is another debate, much like the debate you had earlier in the semester on the American Revolution. Except this time, the teams are going to be the Confederate South and the Union North. And I've divided you into teams based on your last name. So, all the students whose last names begin with A through L, you are going to be on the Confederate team. You're going to be on the South. And those students whose last names begin with M to Z, you are going to be on the North, the Union team. The debate takes place in 3 rounds, and the resolution is, was the American Civil War necessary and justified? If you are on the South, you're going to argue that this was absolutely necessary and totally justified. And you'll give all the reasons and explanations that they gave in the 19th century. And I want you to do it with as much passion and conviction as they did as well. Of course, you can use quotations. You can refer to anything in the book, anything in my presentations, or any outside research that you might have done. And you could bring all that to the debate. If you're the North, you're going to be arguing the opposite. You're going to be arguing that the Civil War was not necessary, it was not justified, it was an unfortunate event that should not have taken place. And so you're going to be arguing the other side just as vigorously and with as much passion as people did in the 19th century. Again, stay in character regardless of what you think personally. This is an exercise in which you put yourself in the shoes, in the place of the historical figures that we're studying as an intellectual exercise, so that you can see every issue from both sides and think about it fairly and objectively, looking at the facts and evidence and really understanding and appreciating the intensity of the moment. And I also think you're going to have a lot of fun with it, as you did with the American Revolution. In the first round, you make your arguments in support of your team, for or against the resolution. In the second round, which begins on Thursday, then you go into the rebuttal phase. So first round, opening arguments. Second round is rebuttal. That's where you attack the positions and arguments made by your opponents. So you read some of their arguments, and then you come up with your own rebuttal, pointing out weaknesses, contradictions, flaws in logic, omission of evidence and facts. And so you really engage them critically in pointing out why their position is incorrect, why it's wrong, or why it's weak. And then the third round, which should conclude on Friday, but I we'll keep the debate open throughout the weekend for students who work and have other responsibilities. But the final round of the debate is the closing arguments. And that's when you get to respond to the criticisms made against you or your team during the rebuttal round, and to explain why you think your team should win this debate. So that is the kind of culmination. It is a summary of everything, but it should be generally shorter than the first two rounds. Although this is a team exercise, students are graded individually based on what you write and what you say. But try to help out your classmates. Try not to be repetitive. So if someone has already made a point, try to introduce a new fact. Keep the debate and conversation moving and going and exciting and enjoyable. And that is the final exercise that you have for this class. Now, next week you'll have your final exam. And typically the final exam will begin the Thursday after the last day of classes. So whenever classes end, then that next Thursday, the final exam will begin. And it will stay up or be available until midnight on Sunday of that week. The final exam is going to be different from your previous exams in the following respects. First of all, there are no multiple choice on the final exam. It will consist of 3 essays. And the reason I've gone with this format is when this course is over and when you're out of college, you'll probably never have to take another multiple choice exam again. But the final exam is a good indication of how students will actually use information in the real world, right? In conversations, in discussions, how you draw on your knowledge of history to understand events, how you express yourself in written form or verbally. And so I asked basically 3 questions, and you'll answer each of those in essay form. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you a little bit about what the questions are going to be, so that you can prepare yourself on how you might answer them. The first question I'll tell you is going to be on the Civil War. This was the last topic of the course. It was a big topic. We spent a lot of time on it. We had a debate on it, which is why all of your preparation for the debate will actually help you on the final exam itself. And in that, I'm going to ask you to trace the path of self-destruction by identifying the key issues and political events that led to this conflict. So here you're not a part of a team. You could draw on both sides, but really objectively, what factors led to this bloody civil war in the United States? And you'll draw on those different things. The second part of that question is going to ask you to look very closely at the life of Abraham Lincoln and the war that took place within him in terms of his own evolution, some of his contradictions. You read a lot of his personal letters, some of his public speeches, and you looked at his role as president during the Civil War. And so the role that Abraham Lincoln played in particular in the Civil War is the second part of that question. And then finally, with this question, to assess the lasting impact of the Civil War on America's history since then, how it changed the country, its significance, its importance, the constitutional amendments that resulted in 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, and how they changed the country. So that's what you'll do in essay number 1. I should point out at this point that this essay is not timed. So unlike your previous exams, we had 2 hours to take the exam. I think this exam could be completed in about the same time. But because it's an essay format, I don't necessarily expect you to write all 3 essays in one sitting. So for that reason, on this exam, and this exam only, you'll be permitted to close the exam, maybe take a break between essays, stretch your feet, get some fresh air, have some milk and cookies, then come back and write your next essay. So this exam will allow you to do that over the course of the exam. The second essay gives you a choice between 2 topics. So the topics I'm going to allow you to choose from with that is the role of economics or the role of religion. So it's not about any particular period. These are concepts and issues that have flowed through all periods in American history, right? As opposed to one thing, These are forces. What kind of forces shaped the growth and development of this country? Economics is a big one, from the reasons why Christopher Columbus and the Spanish were exploring, to the motive of the early colonial settlers, to motives even through the Civil War. How has economics shaped the growth and development of the United States? And you can pick any period, any people you want in developing your answer. Similarly, the role of religion. And so religion has been very important to American history, from the Puritans, the Quakers, the Shakers, the Mormons. And so how has religion shaped America? And you can pick any period, any event, the Great Awakening, the role of religion in the First Amendment, any event, person, or people that you want to discuss in the scope of this course to show how important religion has been to American history. And those are your two choices for essay number 2. The third essay is also a choice. So the choices there are to look at the role of education or the role of identity. By education, I mean, we've read in this course the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. You read the autobiography of Frederick Douglass. We looked at the life of Abraham Lincoln. And so how important has education been in the growth and development of the United States? And what role do you think it will play in the present and the future? And this is an essay that you could address on the final exam. The last option is the role of identity. And America is one of the most diverse countries in the history of the world. It has a very diverse history, as you've learned. And you could explore the role of race, gender, ethnicity, evolving nationality, using people and events that we've studied this semester in the course. And so you can do either of those, but not both. So again, there are a lot of choices for you to choose from as you write those 3 essays. These are not papers, they're not research papers. I think most students could answer each of these questions well in 3 to 4 paragraphs. They should be fairly literate, but I'm not grading it on necessarily grammar and spelling, but it should be intelligent, it should be thoughtful. You're free to reach your own conclusion as long as you support that with evidence and facts to support what it is you'll be saying in your essay. So I want them to be of good quality, and for that reason, as I said, it's not time, but it's not a research paper either. Once you've looked at the questions and once you've began writing it, you cannot refer to outside sources. So you can't use books, you can't use the internet, you can't talk to people. You're still under the honor code, just as we would be doing it if we were doing it in class. You're under the honor code, not to cheat in any way, and under your personal integrity. There are also a lot of features now on Blackboard that can identify if students have gotten things off the internet and things like that. So just be careful with that and do your best. Finally, let me tell you a little bit about how I calculate your final grade for this course. And because students are often interested in this, and although I explain some of it on the syllabus, and it's there for you to read on the first page of the syllabus, let me show you a peek of how I actually do this. Okay, students, so what I'm going to do now is take you behind the scenes and show you exactly how I calculate your grade. This is how Brightspace looks from the student point of view. I'll also show you how it looks when I open it up to calculate. But the first thing you need to look for, of course, these is where you will find all of your weekly assignments. This is where you would find the exams. But for grade purposes, the first thing you should look at is the course syllabus. That was sent to you at the beginning of the course. If you lost it, there's a digital copy in Brightspace. You just go to syllabus and you'll see it here. It will tell you what course you were in, what the semester was, my office hours, description, the books that were required. But this is the point I want to call your attention to. On the very first page, it will list what the course requirements were. Okay? right here you see course requirements. And so for this version of American History 1, students were required to take 4 exams, and those 4 exams would count for about 65% of their grade. And then they would have weekly discussion assignments where they would write essays each week. Sometimes we would have class debates, which would count more, and the final exam itself. So in total, it would be 5 exams and the weekly discussion. And if you put all that together, that would be 100% of your grade. This is what I refer to when I give it the criteria of how much value to give to each assignment, so that it corresponds essentially to what I told the students the grades would be, what would be used. Anything not listed here, if it's not an exam, if it's not a weekly discussion, then it won't be included. So I don't use the practice questions that come with the book. Students are free to do those. They're helpful, but I don't refer to them when it's time to calculate the grade. So first look at your course and see what the stated course requirements are. Then go in and check your grades. So if you go to the top of the menu and you go to grades, this is what you'll see. It will show you all of your grades. Now this grade calculator will also calculate it based on the criteria that I just selected and that I referred to, and it would show it here in the top corner. For most of the semester, I keep the grade calculator blocked out so students can't see it, because it's always calculating, right? Every second is calculating and updating. And at the beginning of the course, it shows all zeros, as it does here, because students haven't taken any exams, they haven't done any assignments, so everything shows as a 0. By the end of the course, there should be actual numbers there. And those numbers show your performance on each assignment and every exam in the course. So you should not see zeros. You should see actual numbers. Before the end of the course, students haven't taken the final exam yet, so that might still be blank. And if that's the case, then it's calculating a 0. If you look at it right now, it may show a 0 for the final exam. Of course, after you've taken the exam, hopefully you won't get a 0 and you won't miss the exam, so there'll be an actual number. So when everything is done, the course is over, you've taken the final exam, then those calculations should be accurate, right? And so we go down the list very quickly. What you'll see, the first category are exams, and I told it to look at the final exam, test number 1, test number 2, test number 3, and test number 4. Okay, those exams were each worth about 100 points, approximately, and it would show your grade out of that 100. So if you got an 85 on the final exam, it would say 85 out of 100. If you got a 95, it would say 95 out of 100. Or a 35 out of 100. If it shows 0 for any of these, that means you missed the exam entirely. Or if it doesn't show a number, then it's calculating it as a 0. So you should see actual numbers. This category shows the weight of that assignment or exam, right? And so the weight of each of these is 14 points, or 14%. And that's, if you multiply it by 5, that would be 70. So all of the exams account for 70% of your grade, right? Which is approximately what I said on the syllabus. And then the discussion assignments, all of those combined are the remaining 30% of your grade. So I'm really just using 2 things, the results of the exams and the results of your discussion assignments. Not all of the assignments were worth the same number of points, though. The constitutional worksheet, that was worth 20 points. Your first essay, the introduction, the autobiography of your life, that was worth 20 points. But most weekly assignments were only worth 12. Sometimes students got extra credit on those assignments, and so you might see a 15, or you might see a 7 or an 8. If you see a 0, that means you missed that assignment that week, and you didn't receive any credit for it. Or no number, or 0, then that means you didn't receive credit. So you should see numbers, and they should be reflecting how you actually did. Now as we look down, I see that the Civil War debate at the end of the course, that was worth 20 points. Whereas a regular assignment is only worth 12. So when it looks at the weight, that's why it gives it more weight than a regular weekly assignment, almost twice as much. If you total all of this up together, that would be 30% of your grade. You put 30 and 70 together, and that's 100% of your grade, and that's what will be shown here. Okay. So the good thing about this, from the student perspective, is you know that Blackboard actually, the calculator in Brightspace actually does the math. I give it the criteria. I tell it what assignments to use, how much each assignment should be worth, and then it does this calculation, and it does it very quickly, and because it's a computer, it does it accurately. For the benefit of students who sometimes suspect, well, the professor didn't like me, so he's lowering my grade, or he liked me, and so he's going to give me a higher grade than the actual numbers show. This, because it's a computer, it's going to do it fairly. It's going to do it the same way for every student, right? And you'll be able to see the results just as I can see them. And that's what you have there. Now, let me change this from student view to how it actually... Okay, now we're in my gradebook. This is how it looks to me, which is very different from the student view. First of all, I can see the entire class. I see all the students at one time. I see their names, and then I could see many things in there. I get the same final grade calculator. And here you could see us calculating student grades using actual numbers up to this point in the semester, right? So this would say this student is getting a 72 out of 100, which is a C minus. This student, 56 out of 100, which is an F. And so it's going to show the calculation based on where we are in the semester. Now, some students actually have higher averages because the semester isn't over yet, so they haven't taken the final exam, they haven't gotten the result of the Civil War debate yet, so it's showing a 0 for the final exam and the Civil War debate. So some of these students, like this student right here is a B minus, if they get an A on the final and they got an A on the Civil War debate, they may still get an A in the course, right? But right now it's showing a 0 for the final and a 0 for the Civil War debate. Again, by the end of the course, when you look at this, there should be actual numbers in each of these categories. Now look at the categories. Extra credit paper up here, the research paper. For American History 1, there was no paper required in that section of the course. Sometimes I teach the honors section of American History 1, where students are required to write a paper. Sometimes it's the writing intensive section, American History 1 with a G, and students have to do a paper. So that's why I said you have to look at the syllabus for the course you're in. Since that course didn't require a paper, I did not use these columns. So if you see any columns in your grade book containing items that we didn't actually use, then you should just ignore it because I'm not going to use that in the calculation. Certainly, you should see for its value or weight, it should be 0. Even if you see the column, its value should be 0. Sometimes students do extra credit papers, though. Even if they're in a course that doesn't require the paper, I allow them to do an honors paper or an extra credit paper. And so there might be a grade in there, and I will give them credit for that assignment. I don't use the practice exams. Students can take them, but I can see that there. And these smart book questions, these are all the questions that come with your textbook. And so here I can see, students in beginning A's who do them, and you see a correlation between students who do the smart book questions and students who don't. Students who do generally do very well in the course, and they have a higher performance on my actual exams, but they're not required, and I don't use them in the calculation. Matter of fact, sometimes I block it out so that you can't even see that in the grade book because it just clutters it, and students get confused seeing all these exams with zeros, and they can't tell the difference between a practice exam or a smart book exam and the exams that I actually use. Then we come to the actual discussion assignments, and then I could see all the weekly assignments here, and then all the actual exams for test number 1, for test number 2, for test number 3. By the way, when you see a number, if you're wondering, the student got a 96, this one got a 65. If you're wondering, why did I get a 65? Why did I get that grade? If you open it up, it should open the actual exam, and you could actually see the questions, what question you selected, what the correct answer was, how much was it worth, which ones you got wrong, how many points you got for the essay, if there was a deduction or a comment, and so you can see the results, even for matching what the actual exam was. So you could look at and see even greater detail. Let's go back to the grades. Okay, so here we are again in my grade book. The way I see it, I see all the students at the same time. I could open up and just look at one student if they had a question and see everything, but I see all of it at the same time, and I see all of the grades. And this is what I showed you earlier. I tell it, use this column for test number 1, test number 2, test number 3, test 4, and the final exam, and count that as 70% of the grade. Then take all of the discussions for each week, and you can see the discussions here, and tabulate those based on their value, and count that for the other 30%, and then calculate that together and give me the total score for the course, and represent it both as a number, a percentage, and then also show it to me as a letter grade. Because when I enter your grades to the college, I'll enter it as a letter, not a number. So it'll be at A, B, C, D, E, or A, B, C, D, or F. So I'll show it to you, and you'll see it both ways there. And that's basically how we calculate the grade. So if you have any questions about this, what I encourage you to do is go into Brightspace, open up the grades, and you can see exactly what your grades were for every exam and every assignment. You know how the math is being done and how it's arriving at your grade. If you want to check any of this, you're welcome to do it. Use the calculator and make sure you're following the same steps, that you're counting all the exams, you're giving them the right value and weight, and you're counting all the discussions and giving them the proper value and weight. And if you do this the same way, you should come out with the same result. If there's a discrepancy or you see an error, then write me immediately and tell me exactly what the error is. Not you disagree, but say, oh, I noticed this, that there was a mistake here, that you'll have that. The last point I'm going to make, one of the most common errors that I see with students are either they claim they completed an assignment, but we don't see the results in Brightspace. If it's not there, it won't count. So this is why it was very important in this semester that you follow instructions, that you complete the assignments, complete them on time, and put them in the correct folder. Sometimes students say, well, I emailed it to you. Well, Brightspace doesn't check my email box looking for assignments. It looks here in these columns for the grade that's supposed to be there. So never email something to me. If there's a problem with Brightspace or a reason why you couldn't upload it, then as soon as you resolve that problem, put the assignment there, right? And so that you can get credit for it. So that's the most common error or problem that I see. But on the whole, the system works. It's very efficient, it's very accurate, and it's also transparent. So I hope this little tour helped you to understand more about the course and how the grades are calculated. Other courses and professors use a similar system. Always check with the course that you're in. For instance, in my Civil War course, they don't do discussions, but they do analysis of individual battles during the Civil War. In my Black Experience course, maybe students have a paper required. In an honors class, the criteria may be different. So this is just an example of how it's done. So take care. Hope you're enjoying the course, and be well.